Welcome back to another episode of Around the World. This is episode 11 as we continue to roll along this NBA season. And now we officially are in NBA Cup play. That is what we've got on the slate today. That is the main topic of this episode. We're going to talk about that first night of NBA Cup games because it absolutely delivered. Always, of course, though, starting with our community question, which today is going to be the most disappointing start to the season. Now that we see the records shape up a little bit more than, just being 3-0 or 0-3 or whatever, we start to kind of see problems we have with teams losing games or winning games that you wouldn't have expected them to. And I think the most disappointing start for me is going to be the Dallas Mavericks. I definitely considered the Bucks. I definitely considered the Sixers. Sixers have been so injured that I was like, you know what, they'll be fine, especially in the East. Same can be said for the Bucks, although injuries have been less of a problem for them. It's definitely still affecting them. But again, even then, they're 2 wins away from, being the 5-4 seed out East right now. So I felt like they were super disappointing, but I think overall the most disappointing is going to be the Mavericks 5-7, including a loss to the Jazz last night that we will get into later on in this episode. Like I said, though, the topic of the video, the title, probably the reason why you clicked on it is because we are talking about the NBA Cup. We had the first slate of NBA Cup games. We have more coming tonight, and this was on Tuesday. We had Atlanta and Boston, Miami, Detroit, Dallas, Golden State, New York and the Sixers, Phoenix and Utah, Charlotte, Orlando, Toronto, Milwaukee, and Minnesota, Portland. So we're going to go ahead and dive into some of those games. We'll, of course, more so focus on the games that had a bigger meaning overall towards the season. Like, we're not exactly going to talk about Orlando just beating the crap out of Charlotte. We're not exactly just going to talk about that. But some of these games that have a little bit more, we're going to get into. Starting first with the Heat's loss to the Detroit Pistons. For one, the Heat have struggled to start the season. Some of it can be attributed to injury, with Jimmy Butler being out now 3 games, and I think it might be continuing. I'm actually not sure what the extent of that injury was, I guess, but it's definitely been a slow start for them. And if we look back at the standings, I mean, you look at the Eastern Conference and they're 4-6, and for a team similar to what I said with the Bucks that is mostly healthy, it's a disappointing start. Not a terrifying start because the conference is so weak that a few games here and there and you're right back up to the top, but certainly a scary start, especially this loss to Detroit. So they were losing for a majority of the game. And in the fourth quarter, they did work their way back into the game, retook the lead. Tyler Hero had 40. I mean, Tyler Hero just played phenomenal, but it wasn't enough. And you end out overtime in just an awful, awful way. I can't remember who scored for Detroit. It might have been Marcus Sasser. Somebody scores for Detroit on a pretty relatively easy shot, and then Miami goes and tries to call timeout when they don't have one. I think it might have been a Jalen Duren lob, actually. And Miami tries to call timeout when they don't have one, picks up technical foul, just an all-around mess up. A mess up on the inbound play that led to that shot, and then also just a mess up from a coaching standpoint by not knowing how many timeouts you have left and costing your team a game. I mean, that legitimately costed them the win, or a chance at the win. At least. So Detroit, actually, who has had a pretty solid start so far to the season in what relatively, like I said, is a bad Eastern Conference, but for them, certainly a good start at 5-8. They continue to improve and work their way up the standings, and I believe lead, or I don't think they lead. I think they're actually second in their NBA Cup group because overtime doesn't count towards point differential. It's just a win or a loss. But still, for Detroit, that was a big win. I want to give them credit where it's due because they certainly look like a potential most improved team going into the year and as the year continues to go along. Next up, we stay out east and we move on to the Hawks-Celtics game. Another surprising game and another close game. Boston, again, didn't play bad. This is just the only thing with Boston is the defense is so good, but just some nights there's going to be teams that are just going to hit their shots on them. And tonight was one of those nights where the Hawks just hit their shots against Boston. Boston, it obviously sucks because coming off of last year where you weren't able to win the in-season tournament, I believe they lost to the Pacers in that first round matchup. I don't think they lost to the Pacers. I don't think they played the Pacers in Vegas. Or I could be wrong. No, I think they did play the Pacers in Vegas. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But coming off of last year, you win the championship, but you still want more. And one of the things now to be able to add to your resume, add to the team's trophy collection is an in-season tournament. And so it sucks for them, but I don't exactly believe that Atlanta is going to sweep their way through the rest of the group, the in-season tournament group. So if Boston can win their next three and rack up the point differential, all it takes is one Atlanta loss, and Boston's right back to it. Same can be said for this team, who also took a loss, and that is the Minnesota Timberwolves. I made a video last night about them. If you have not seen it, be sure to go take a look because I go more in depth. It's about 15 minutes long, talking about the Wolves' disappointing start to the season so far, and they were certainly up there for most disappointing if it wasn't for the Mavs. They lose to Portland in embarrassing fashion. They lose the first quarter by double digits. They lose the third quarter by double digits. Just an absolute ass whooping. I mean, they got their butts handed to them, and it wasn't even close. Naz Reid led the team in scoring, which when you see a thing like that, you kind of go, oh, so they won by a lot. Nope, they got absolutely dominated. I believe the final score was they lost by 15 or so, and it just wasn't what you expected from this Timberwolves team. And I talk about it more in that video. And I think if you really are curious about these Timberwolves issues, to go watch that video where I talk a lot more about Donte DiVincenzo's slow start to the season and Ant's slow start to the season. Because, well, not Ant's slow start, let me clarify. The problem with trading Cat, how that affects Ant. Because Ant's role, and I'll mention it real quick now while I'm at it, because I think it is an important point I want to make in this video as well. Ant's role is to be the number one option. There's no doubt about it. Of course, he is going to be the number one option. He was probably the number one option last year. I don't think that was really debatable. But the problem is now, you don't have the security that Karl-Anthony Towns gave you. When you had Cat on the Minnesota Timberwolves, you knew if Ant kind of comes out slow and only scores 21 or 19 or has a bad three-point shooting night, you know Cat's delivering you 22. Ant can also sometimes win you games against those great teams, against Denver, putting up 30-point performances, 40-point performances against the Suns in the playoffs last year. But on the nights where Ant isn't as good, the Wolves don't have that surefire second option in Julius Randle compared to Cat, which overall is costing them in nights like this, where the rest of the team, like this is a game last year, this is the stereotypical Cat saves the Wolves game. He did it against the Hornets last year when Cat had 60, even though the Wolves lost in that game. That was a type of example where it's like Ant did not play good, but Cat just absolutely carried them to that win. Well, in this case, a loss. And so without that surefire second option, it just makes things way, way more difficult on Anthony Edwards. It puts a lot more pressure on him. And if he has these bad nights, the Wolves are going to lose to bad teams. But that being said, the ceiling of Anthony Edwards makes you excited because if he gets hot for, say, a month stretch come playoff time, you're not beating the Wolves. Simple as that. So hopefully Edwards can find some more consistency because I feel like with no Cat being there, his consistency certainly becomes very, very important. And without it, the Wolves are going to have losses like this. Moving on to, I believe, our final game. Yes, the final game that I would like to talk about, and that is Dallas Golden State. Klay Thompson's return to the Chase Center, to the Bay Area, to San Francisco, whatever you want to call it. And it was a great game. Honestly, Curry played phenomenal. Klay Thompson played phenomenal. And it's another win for Golden State where you're just like, wow, like the Mavs played good. And Golden State still was able to pull out that win. I've been kind of waiting for, the fall off isn't the right word, but I've been kind of waiting with this Warriors start going, okay, I feel like at some point they might start to lull. They haven't at all. The offensive rating is phenomenal. The defensive rating is phenomenal. And they look like contenders in the Western Conference right now. Simple as that. When I saw, the 7-2 start, I'm thinking, okay, they'll kind of lull back out to where the Lakers are right now, 7-4, and just kind of go back into that play and hunt, move up and down the conference here and there. They have certainly not done that. They have been really, really good. I'm excited to see them continue to go along. I believe that was the best team in their group, I think was the Mavericks, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, that's a big win in the in-season tournament. It's a big win over the course of regular season, just to be able to get that Klay, that moment is done now, kind of like what we talked about with Bronny and LeBron James in that first game of the season. Just get that moment past. Be done with it. Move on from it. Curry had the trash talking, saying, what do you say, stay here, you better stay here, because I believe they were in Dallas. I mean, that is awesome. Or sorry, they're not in Dallas. What the hell am I talking about? It's returned Bay Area. But It's that Curry is one of those guys that you just don't talk trash to in the NBA, and you wouldn't expect it. When you think of that, you think of guys like LeBron, guys like KD. Curry's one of those guys you just can't do anything to him, man, because he is going to back it up 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10. So a big, big win for the Warriors there, and another great NBA Cup game, a great way to end the first day of the NBA Cup in this season. And we move on to what may have passed I believe last weekend, Saturday, for the best day in the NBA so far, and that was Wednesday. Wednesday, November 13th, had some phenomenal games and the best individual performances of the season so far. Jared McCain, I want to give a big shout out to him. He was a guy that I had on my radar as a good rookie, but I was like, you know what? The opportunity I don't think is going to be there. Maxey, Paul George, Kelly Oubre, whoever you want to mention on that team, even Eric Gordon. I just felt Kyle Lowry. I just felt like it would be unlikely for McCain to be able to get minutes. And with the injuries, he has taken advantage of those minutes. Obviously, it hasn't led to much success for the Sixers yet, which can be expected when you go play the best team in the NBA without your 3 best players. So I can't exactly fault him for that. But I mean, he had a phenomenal game. One of the best performances of the night. 34 points, I believe, 10 assists to go along with it, against one of the best, if not the best defense in the NBA so far by rating. I think the Thunder might be higher than them. In the Cleveland Cavaliers. And he looked like a real NBA starter. He looked like a real NBA star. And it's just really, really exciting. I don't think for him he's going to be able to remain in the Rookie of the Year race with guys that are just simply getting more opportunity. Edey, I'm blanking on the guy's name on the Grizzlies right now. I apologize for that. There's just guys clinging who are just going to get more opportunity than him, and it makes it tough for a guy like Jared McCain to be able to rack up the averages to be able to win that award. But a phenomenal game from him nonetheless. Another game, Victor Wembanyama drops 50 points against Washington. His career high before this, I don't even know if it got to 40. But this game, I mean, this was a 50-point game from the start. I mean, he had 25 points at halftime. He had like 40 at the end of the third. I mean, you just knew he's going to come out here with 50 points, and he did. And this is the type of stuff I want to see from Victor Wembanyama. He is going to have tough games against good teams. We see that. We saw that in the very first game of the season with them playing the Mavs. He had a very, very tough game, looked tired, inefficient, all that sort of stuff. But where the good players get going is playing the bad teams. And this is what I talked about with the Wolves a little bit, where Ant struggled against the Blazers. If Wemby can get over that hurdle and just always have a good night against the bad teams, always, that is the type of stuff that's going to make you, 1, boost your averages throughout the season, but 2, build up the confidence so when you do go play one of those good teams, you're not worried about like, oh God, man, I feel like I'm not really getting going and now I'm playing top 5 defense in the NBA. Like, no, he knows he can go out there and do it. Obviously, he's playing a better team than the Wizards if you were to play, say, the Mavericks or Cavs, Celtics, Thunder, anybody. But these type of performances are what builds up averages and builds up confidence for when you go play those good teams. And the good players do not have off nights against bad teams. Usually, they'll have really good nights to start, and they'll play so good that they don't even have to play majority of the fourth quarter. That is what the legends do. That's what the stars do. And that is what Victor Wembanyama did. A phenomenal performance from him, including, I believe, like 6 or 7 threes. I mean, it's ridiculous. I need to take a drink of water quick. That cough is almost gone, if you have seen the last couple videos. So we're getting there. And more performances on the same night. This is still Wednesday. Cat, in a game against, I believe it was Philly. Am I wrong? Against Chicago. They played Philly in the end-season tournament. Cat drops 46 and 10. And again, as a Wolves fan, I'm really disappointed. I think the trade overall will be better for us in the future of the team. But it sucks when you watch Cat go out there and so far have a career year with a new team. 30 points. I think he's averaging 30 points per game in a team with Jalen Brunson. So it really hurts. It really, really does hurt, and it's unfortunate. And I miss him out there with the Minnesota Timberwolves, especially watching these last couple games as the Timberwolves have fallen apart. But to be fair, it's not all good. He missed some big free throws, and New York lost the game to Chicago, playing in New York. I mean, you just can't do that. Phenomenal game from Cat, but it wasn't enough. I still want to see more from Jalen Brunson. That shot that he took, though, just was brutal, barely rimming out. It looked like it was going to go, and it just didn't. And it sucks, but I mean, that's the type of stuff that's going to hurt you over the course of a season. I do think the Knicks are going to be fine with the weakness of the Eastern Conference, but losses like this make you start to worry come playoff time. Obviously, again, very, very early. But if we see similar things like this throughout the season, you get worried about them truly being able to make a run. Or if they do make a run and go see a Boston or Cleveland, you feel not so confident that they're going to be able to put up a fight with those teams. Or if they do, you feel not confident that they're going to be able to put up a fight with the Western Conference champion, Thunder, Suns, Nuggets, Wolves, Mavs, whoever, once you get there. So definitely want to see some signs of improvement from the Knicks, but overall, a great performance from Cat and a great performance from the Chicago Bulls to be able to hold off that game from Cat. Two more to go. Giannis. Actually, no, we'll end with Giannis. We'll start with this one because this was the game we mentioned earlier. Jordan Poole had 40. I think this went very, very under the radar because of the Victor Wembanyama 50-point game. He had a little scuffle with Chris Paul at the end. I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe just some beef because they got traded for each other or something. I don't really know what happened. Chris Paul just does start beef with a lot of players as well. But Jordan Poole, I was very, very impressed. I watched a lot of the second half of that game once I saw Wemby was at that point, and Jordan Poole looked phenomenal. He, too, was like a true 40-point game. Like, he had 20 and a half. He was cooking the entire way. And it's that type of stuff that if you go all the way back to the video I made in, I think, like March about Jordan Poole, I talked about how I want to see more maturity from him. I want to see him go back to that role, that confidence where I'm no longer seeing Jordan Poole have these cringy moments or throwing a towel in the middle of his coach talking about a play and not paying attention. I'm not seeing that anymore. All I'm seeing from Jordan Poole is Jordan Poole's cooking in the first quarter. He's got 14 in the first quarter. Or Jordan Poole cooked tonight. He had 40 points. That's what I want to see from Jordan Poole. Not necessarily that he has to be an all-star or make a big leap or win MIP or anything like that. I want to see him get back to a form where he can have enough value to go back to a contending team because I feel like he belongs there. He does not belong on a team like this. He belongs on a Warriors. Obviously, they don't need him right now to go be that bench scoring guy. And I'm really, really excited for when that opportunity comes for him because I do believe it will. Now, we can get into Giannis's 59-point game against Detroit. I will say for Milwaukee, very, very fortunate that they even came out of here with a win. It took Ron Holland, a rookie 19-year-old kid, to miss 2 free throws that would have won them the game. I mean, to be fair, Milwaukee did kind of get shafted on a few calls, more than a few calls throughout this game, because again, I also watched a lot of this one. But Milwaukee, it still doesn't look perfect, and it's disappointing that you have to have performances like this to beat a Detroit, but it's exciting. Like I said with Wemby, these are the type of wins, type of moments that get you going. Giannis had the big game against Boston. Yes, they didn't finish that game out well, and they lost. But the performance against Boston, the performance against Detroit, this is the type of stuff that builds you up and starts to motivate you to get back into a conference that clearly isn't good enough. They are going to be able to boost up this conference. We could be talking a week from now, next Friday, we could be talking about Milwaukee being the 4 seed out east or the 3 seed out east. Because that's how easy the conference is to rise up because everybody's under 500 except for the top 3. So, I mean, if Giannis can go out there and continue to boost his way up and carry his team, it doesn't matter what the wins look like as long as they get them, and you just hope that they're ready come playoff time. Because when it comes playoff time, if Giannis is healthy, good luck to anybody. The Bucks, despite being awful, have put up 2 incredible fights against the Celtics so far this season, and I think if they see them in a playoff series with Giannis healthy, it's a scary thing to see. Even though I think Boston wins that, it's a scary thing to see. And so I'm very, very excited for the Bucks. I feel like they've had a little bit of a minor resurgence, very minimal, but a few wins here and there can really start to add up in this Eastern Conference. They can boost their way back up. The last note I had for Wednesday was going to be that the Cavs just win again against Philadelphia. They just win no matter what. But we're going to talk about that to wrap out the episode because they are still undefeated. we're going to go back to the Mavs, team I talked about in disappointment. Already a slow start to the season. I think people kind of didn't realize that, they were 5-5 or whatever it was a few days ago. And you're just kind of like, that's not great. And then there's only one game on in the NBA last night. So every NBA fan with League Pass who is a big enough fan to be watching other teams has the eyes on the Mavericks Jazz game last night. No Kyrie Irving. I guess I can give him that. But still, there is no excuse to lose this game. And there is some bad clips of Luka Doncic out there just not playing defense. There's a clip of a screen happening against Colin Sexton. And Sexton literally just walks to the left. Luka stands there. I believe they messed up the switch. But Luka just stands there, watches Colin Sexton walk into a pull-up mid-range from the elbow. Simple as that. And then, of course, you have the last play, which I'm seeing blame thrown around all over the place for whose fault it was. Was it the coach's fault on the sideline? Was it the player's fault for miscommunicating? Was it Luka's fault for just being unaware? Which I think is the opinion I'm going to take, because it doesn't matter what anybody else is saying. You should be focused on your guy. And John Collins gets a simple wide open dunk, and the Jazz shock the Mavericks and beat them. And the Mavericks drop to 5-7. They are nearly tied with the Portland Trailblazers on the season. That is brutal. Coming off your best season since you won the championship in 2011, 2010, whatever it was, and you go to the finals. Luka's finally on a big stage. In the regular season, at least. He's always had great regular seasons, but now I predicted him to win MVP because I was like, this is finally the year that he is going to be seen. And he has not made the most of that moment. Some of the stat lines have been great. The stat line last night against the Jazz was great. I believe like 37 points. I mean, just good stuff. But not enough. And the type of stuff that makes you hated and disliked by NBA fans is not the stats. It's the clips that the fans who aren't watching the whole game are going to see. And when they go out there and they see Luka with some of those lazy defensive plays, it builds up frustration. It builds up frustration from fans. It builds up frustration from Mavericks fans. I know plenty of people in the world who are Wolves fans, but they don't watch every Wolves game as much as I do, or as much as some of my friends do. They will watch the highlights. They'll watch the clips. They'll check the stat sheets. And if they're seeing a clip of their best player, Anthony Edwards, being lazy, or Julius Randle being lazy, that is what they're going to cling on to. And that's how you lose a fan base. That's how you make your fan base disgruntled. It's how you piss off teammates, coaches, everybody involved. And so I hope for their sake they can get that figured out, because it has been a problem for a long time. And now that he's really on a national stage, it is being seen by the whole world. Excuse me. Last topic of the day. I feel like I keep saying this every single week, and that's probably because I am. The Cavs are still undefeated. What is it, 13-0 now? 13-0 on the season. And if you go to the schedule, I think it's very likely they're going to be 15-0. They play the Bulls in the NBA Cup. They're at home today. The Bulls did just give them a good game a few days ago, but to be honest, I don't feel like it's going to happen again. I feel like the Cavs are taking this. Then they go play the Hornets at home. That you would likely say is a surefire win on Sunday. And so I think we're looking at the 15-0 Cleveland Cavaliers coming up with the number 2 seed, the championship favorites, I would say still, Boston Celtics. That is going to be one of the biggest games of the season on Tuesday, November 19th. I certainly will have my eyes on that game. I don't believe the Wolves actually play in the NBA Cup that day, so definitely won't have to worry about it, multi-viewing or watching any other game. I will be watching that Cavs-Celtics game on Tuesday without a doubt, and I am extremely excited. I think the Cavs are going to be 15-0. I seriously think it. And if somehow, because we have seen the Cavs kind of falter, they play close with everybody. They play close with the good teams. They play close with the bad teams, except for a few occasional blowouts, like when they blew out the Warriors the other night. But if they get that win, I mean, watch out. If they go, let's say they win the next 2 games. They go play the Celtics in the NBA Cup. If they are able to pull off that win against the Boston Celtics, they play at home against the Pelicans, at home against the Raptors. Now we're talking 18-0. At home against the Hawks, away against the Hawks. 2 very winnable games. And then we see the Celtics again, and then we start to get into those harder games. Nuggets, Celtics, Heat, Bucks, Sixers when they're healthy. Warriors again, Nugget. This is where we start to get into a harder schedule where they're just bound to lose a game. But if they're able to beat the Celtics, this team can actually, like, not even a joke, be 18, 19, 20-0. That's ridiculous. That's insane. And so I'm very excited to watch it. I do think that when I speak to you guys on Monday, that the Cavs will be 15-0. I feel very confident in that. Then it would just be up to if they're going to be, 18-0. Or sorry, what would that be? 17-0 when I talk to you guys a week from now. That Cavs game is going to be absolutely massive. I'm very excited for it. But yeah, this Cavs team could be scary. And that wraps out an episode, a little bit of a shorter one today, since I have talked in depth about the Wolves and just simply the fact that it was a lot of NBA Cup stuff rather than a regular topic today. The weekly notes kind of meshed in with the topic of today's video. Really excited to keep this NBA Cup going. I think the first night went phenomenal. I don't think every single night is going to be, that many competitive games, but it is fun to watch these players have a little bit more to play for in just what otherwise would be a regular NBA regular season game. You know what I mean? Very exciting. As always, if you are watching over on YouTube, you can listen to all these episodes over on Spotify. Look up Around the World, look up Word Your Boss 30. You will find me. If you are listening over on Spotify, come over to YouTube and you can actually see me physically talking to you as I do all of these videos. Look up Word Your Boss 30, look up Around the World. Same thing, you will find me. If you made it to the end, I really, really do appreciate it. If you're watching or listening, if you could leave a like, a review, 5-star, comment, anything to help the channel or channels is very, very appreciated. It really does mean a lot, and it helps grow the community that we do have. Sorry about that. Once again, if you guys made it to the end, I really, really do appreciate you guys for watching or listening, and I'll see you guys on Monday for the next episode of Around the World.